to the Wednesday webinar. I am Heidi Rethmeier, a staff developer at ESU 8, and we're going to talk about how to incorporate Hour of Code in your class. The Computer Science Education Week is coming up in December. And some changes from the previous year. So there are some new things that you can do, and they've really added a lot of resources and activities that the students can do. So I really think it's pretty neat. Hour of Code is really an effort to expose children and students to programming, computer programming, and coding, which is really the term that's thrown around quite a bit nowadays. So I'm going to show you how you could, if you wanted to just use this for a quick hour in a class, or if you wanted to do something a little more extensive in your classes. So, why do I feel this is important? I like this little cartoon that, yes, you have to attend my class. You can't just follow me on Twitter. Today's generations, this is how they communicate through technology. So I think it's important that students have a feeling for where this technology comes from. And I would really like to track down who this person is who wrote the code for Flappy Bird, because really a high score of 2 is about all I could ever get, and then I handed it back to my daughter. So, and one of the activities now in Hour of Code is actually a Flappy Bird activity. They can make their own Flappy Bird game. So it's pretty neat, and most of the kids are familiar with that. So this is a website that you should write down, and all of the resources that I'm going to talk about today are on there, so you don't have to scribble them down. As long as you have this one and maybe bookmark it, it has all the resources that you would need to do Hour of Code. And then if you wanted to go further with coding, there's a lot of other information there. So esu8stem.weebly.com. And I will take you there shortly, and I'll show you what that looks like and how we can get to Hour of Code from there also. All right, so as I mentioned, Computer Science Education Week is December 8 through 14. There are several links that you could go to for Hour of Code. The first one that I have listed here, I'll use my little arrow. This one right here. This is the site that you would go to if you just want your students to maybe do an hour of this. There's no need for them to keep track of how far they got in it, and you just want to give them a little exposure to it. They do it and they're done. If they ever came back to it, they would basically have to start from scratch. However, there's no account needed, so they don't have to sign up for anything. So that is the advantage to using that particular site. I am probably going to skip this one because they really have combined both the student and the teachers under the studio code. So I'm going to take you to the studio code, and both students and teachers can now create accounts there. And if they do create an account, their progress is saved. Now for younger students who maybe don't have an email address, the studio code lets you create a class for younger students, and then they can sign up for your class just using a code, and I will step you through that. And they've really added some neat things for the much younger students, so that instead of trying to remember a password, their password is basically a secret picture. So if they remember their picture, they can log in and it will keep track of their progress. And Hour of Code should work on about any platform that you have. I haven't had any trouble with either a PC, Mac, Chromebook, or an iPad. So I'm going to take you to my Weebly now under Technology. So if you go to Technology, I have a drop down for Hour of Code, and you don't need to go there now. This, as long as you have that link, you should be able to find it. So Hour of Code. So here are the two links that are pretty important. The Hour of Code, this one right here, will just take you to the site where students can just go straight to the activities, no login, nothing is saved. The Code Studio down here is where both students and teachers can log in and where teachers can create their classes. So we're going to first start by going to just the Hour of Code, where there is no login required. All right, so you can see there are all sorts of activities your students can do. The most commonly used one is this Tutorials for Beginners, and we'll go through that one. Other activities, if they want to learn more about JavaScript. There are some unplugged activities, basically if you'd like to do some activities about the thought process behind computer science without technology. The Lightbot one is, I would consider this more of a primary or grade school activity. The CodeCombat, my 10-year-old son was playing on this last night and he loved it. So this is a pretty neat one here too. And then I haven't played with this one, but they can also try their hand at this by making their own apps. Now, I will say with the CodeCombat one, this takes them to another site, and they do have to create a username and password and have to have an email address. I'm not sure about the Lightbot, but this one, the tutorials for beginners, does not. So we're going to go to this one first, and we'll just take a look at what it looks like. And it used to start right off with the video, but it doesn't do that anymore. So I'm going to pull up the video. But there are 20 puzzles, and getting through all 20 on average would take students about an hour. And they obviously use the whole Angry Birds concept to teach students some programming. And so basically, you're trying to get to the pig. All right, so we're going to first just watch this video. I think this is a really neat video down here on the left for you to show your students. It's about 2 minutes long.
I was in 8th grade when I learned to program.
I first learned how to make a green circle and a red square appear on the screen.
You just learn these lessons, and there aren't that many of them, and you just eventually can get to the point where you can do almost anything that you want.
Computer science is just learning how a computer works and how it thinks so that you can teach it to do new things.
These days, what you can do in computer science is pretty much amazing.
I think it's the closest thing we have to a superpower.
In the next hour, we're going to play a game that will teach you the basic concepts of programming. Usually programming is all in text, but we'll use Blockley, which uses visual blocks that you drag and drop to write programs. Under the hood, you're still creating code. To start off, we're going to build code for a program that will help this Angry Bird move through a maze to get to the evil pigs that stole its eggs. Blockley is split into 3 main parts. On the left is the bird's maze, where your program will run. The instructions for each level are written below the maze. This middle area is the toolbox, and each of these blocks is a command that the bird can understand. The white space on the right is called the workspace, and this is where we'll build our program. If I drag the move block to our workspace and press run, what happens? The bird moves forward 1 box on the grid. And what if I want the bird to do something after the move forward on 1 box? I can add another block to our program. I'm going to choose the turn right block, and I'll drag it underneath my move block until the yellow arrow appears. And then I'll drop it, and the 2 blocks will snap together. When I press run again, the bird will perform the commands that are stacked from top to bottom on our workspace. If you ever want to delete a block, just remove it from the stack and drag it to the trash can. After you've hit run, you can always hit the reset button to get the bird back to the start. Now let's get those pigs.
Okay, so I think that's really kind of a fun introduction to show the students and give them an idea as to the importance of coding. So I'm just going to step through one of these. Let me make that a little bigger for you. All right, so when I hit the run, it should move forward, but if I want to get to the pig, I better move forward twice. And this is something I think would be nice for your older students. Yeah, I would use this. I think you can use this even at kindergarten. I think your best bang for your buck are probably 3rd through 12th. Honestly, 3rd through 12th. But I have seen kindergartners do really well with this. Now for the older kids, since you asked that question, Laura, I would actually show them the code. So this is showing them the actual JavaScript that you're doing, and it shows kind of the syntax. So if you're doing it with older kids, I would recommend doing that. And then all they have to do is hit run. Okay, so I completed one. I would go on, and it would just get a higher level of difficulty. It gets to the point where they start talking about loops and some repeats and some if-then statements. Yeah, so it does show the coding, so the JavaScript specifically. So yeah, I'm glad it does that. Though, block programming is a good place to start, and then you can build with that by showing them the JavaScript. Okay, so then you would just continue that for 20 puzzles. So well, we would run out of time if we kept going, but it is very addictive. All right, so now I'm going to go back. So that was the tutorials for beginners. Again, another one I would recommend here would be the CodeCombat, but you would need an email address. Now, if you want to create an actual teacher account where you would have students, I'll go back to my Weebly. Now I would go to my Code Studio, and it will look slightly different. A student can sign up, and they would use this if they have an email address, and then you would give them a code for your class, and then so they would then be enrolled in your class. Now, for the younger kids, I'll show you how you do that. It's a little different. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the teacher. Actually, I already have a teacher, but if you don't have a teacher account, this is where you would go. I already have one, so I'm going to sign in under my teacher account. And before I do that, let me show you. There are several classes. Let me go back. There are several classes you could choose your students to sign up for. You can do the Hour of Code. You can sign them up for that class. For the elementary students, you can see the different grade levels here. You could sign your class up for Course 1, Course 2, Course 3, or they have several others. The one on the bottom here is if you have a more extensive course, maybe you have them for a couple weeks or a quarter, you could do something more extensive. All right, so now let me go to sign in, and you'll see you will have those choices for classes. I'll make that a lot bigger too. All right, so here's your teacher homepage, and this is where you would probably spend most of your time on the student accounts in progress. And here is where you would create a new section for a new class. You can say, see, I've been playing with this and I've created several sections. Okay. Also, each of your section has a login type. Now, for my older students, I would have them use an email where I would just give them this code, and then there's a place when they log in to put in that code, and then you can see one student, who happened to be me, logged in and put that code in, so I have one student. Now, if you have much younger kids, so let's say grades K2, you could have a secret picture for them, and then when you just create a, most of them have an iPad, so I just bookmarked the page for that class. Then they pick their name and their secret picture, and they're in, and I will show you that with my iPad. Or for maybe 3rd through 5th grade, they could have a secret word that they have to type in. So they made it so there's several options if students do not have an email address. Let's see, let me go to, so you can see what progress looks like. So I signed them up for Hour of Code, and I can see how far these students have gotten. Okay. All right, so let's just say we're going to set up a new section. So we will call this 4th period. The type of login you can choose. I will do picture, grade, let's say it's 1st grade. And I'm probably going to do course 1. So here's where I said you have the choices of the courses to do. So I would make sure you look through those courses and figure out which one you want to do first, because the descriptions aren't on here. But I know that course 1 is really good for students who maybe don't have a lot of reading skills yet. Okay, and then I would save it. And then this would be a section code, but I'm going to go and I will show you where we can get the actual link. So now I want to add students. And actually, I would just add multiple students. They make it pretty easy. So I could have Anna, Kellyanne. I always use my own children's names. I'm sure they hate it. William. Let's say we have Larry. Let's say we have Natalie. Okay, and done. And I would go ahead and put their age in there, because when I logged in, if I did not put their age in there, it asked for it. So I don't think you need to put the gender in. And then it will generate a secret password or a secret picture. All right, so now I can see when Larry logs in, he would just have to pick this funny little alien. And if you wanted to, down here where it says print out cards with your students' information, so you could do this with students that either have a secret picture or a secret word. This is something that they could put somewhere, maybe in a notebook so that they can refer to it. And then here is the URL, and this is where I bookmark this URL in an iPad, and I usually label it, third period, or you could say Miss Meyer's class or something like that. And then all they have to do is pick their name and their secret picture. Okay. I think that pretty much shows you the teacher side. I'm going to try to show you now with my iPad what it would look like for a student. So let's see if I can get my AirPlay to work. All right. So now, if I would go to Safari, I would go to my bookmarks, and you can see on the left I've got code.org second period. So you could call it whatever you want, maybe put your name there. So they pick that, and then they would just find their name. I will say Jack, and then Jack would have to know his secret picture, and I forgot Jack's secret picture, I don't remember, but then it would take him into whatever class you signed him up for. So it's pretty simple for the younger kids. If it was a secret word, they would just type in their secret word. So that's a good way to do it with the younger kids. All right. Let me turn off my AirPlay. All right, let's go back. Student accounts. Manage students if you need to add or delete students, and then obviously the view progress. This one I can delete just because I don't have any students in it yet. So I think we covered about everything you need here. And this is a good just summary of what I talked about. When should I use a picture, word, or email password? So, okay. Khan Academy also has some, they call them Hour of Code. They have some videos that they can watch, and then they do some coding too. But I really like the Hour of Code. That's not the Khan Academy. This might be something that your students could do as they get a little older or a little more experienced with their coding procedures. So since I have you here, I'm going to go ahead and show you some other resources that I have. As I mentioned, the CodeCombat is, I think, pretty neat for the upper level kids, even the middle school kids. My 10-year-old he really did a pretty good job getting the hang of it. And here you have a choice of either using Python or JavaScript. And on my Hour of Code, or sorry, my Weebly, under Technology. Oh, let me see your message. Maybe I could start with Hour of Code. Oh yeah, I think that would be wonderful. Yeah, I think this is Hour of Code. I think is really targeting that 4th through 8th grade. I think it's ripe for those age groups. So I want to show you maybe some other resources that you could use with your upper level kids. Have you ever used Scratch? Cool. Yeah, I have Scratch on here too. Whoops. And actually, I just did a coding workshop today for 6 hours where we covered Scratch. So I have this one here too. And if your kids get pretty good with Hour of Code, Scratch is pretty similar just because it uses block programming too. And if you wanted to, I don't know how comfortable you feel with Scratch, but I could come out and maybe do some things like today for my coding class, we created a Pong game. I'm dating myself, but we created the Pong game using Scratch, so it was pretty cool. Okay, so that was really about all I had to give. Boy, a half hour goes really fast. We have a few minutes, but I just want to encourage everyone to have their students explore some coding, become familiar with it. It is just, it is, I think, a literacy skill that I think today's students and future adults really need to have, because I can't think of a single business that doesn't use some sort of program that someone had to write. So it is their world now. It's how they communicate. Yeah, It's everywhere. So so please use my resource on my Weebly. And if you have any questions or you want me to come out and do some things with your students, I've done some things with the Makey Makeys too, using the code, doing some coding. Just give me a call.